demo of PTGui, which is the main stitcher. PTGui and Auto Panel Giga are like the two main stitchers. So I've launched PTGui Pro. We'll open a new file. I'm going to go into the advanced mode. Load images. Here's Lisa's room. And my filing is Jeff's house, Lisa's room, raw files, rendered JPEGs, settings files from the Photoshop RAWs, and infused is what I did on the previous demo using the Macintosh program Bracketeer. But now we're going to do PTGui, and we're going to do the HDR. We're going to deal with the exposure brackets as part of the stitching, not as a separate step. And you'll probably like this. I think you're going to lean towards PTGui instead of Auto Panel Giga. And it's like driving a car. Do you like Chevys or Fords? It's personal preference. So you need to try out the demos of both of them. So anyhow, load images. We'll go into the rendered JPEGs, and here are the 15 JPEGs that we did in the HDR, in the Photoshop raw processing file. So we'll open up those 15 JPEGs. Okay. Align images. And it's looking at them all, and as it goes, it's recognizing that we have photo brackets going on in here. So it senses that, and it's working with the brackets. Okay, so this is how it sees the stitching working out. And I'll tell you what, that XSI on that little rig you've got really does a great job. The alignment looks good. The geometry looks good. Everything about it looks good. Now we'll go into exposure / HDR. You can do true HDR stitching, but you still have to know what you're doing. And I think it's an advanced. It's more advanced than I want to go, and I don't see any need for it. So, automatic exposure and color adjustments. We'll click this and see what happens. We are set up to use Fusion, which is exposure blending, as opposed to tone mapping, which is true HDR. Feel free to experiment with it. I've done all I want to and have decided that Fusion is the way to go for me. Automatic exposure and color adjustments. And we can see that it made some changes. And now we can look at our preview, and we can use these controls if we wish to adjust exposure and color of how it's going to turn out. I like it. I don't need to do anything with it. But if I did, I mean, we can brighten it, and you can see it rippling through all the pieces of this. But we'll leave it, we'll leave it as is. We'll leave it at defaults. If you saw any color problems, here's where you'd adjust that. And just to show you, red is the opposite of cyan in photographic colors, in RGB colors. So if I take out red, the image goes very cyan. Or if I add red, it goes red. So red and cyan are photographic opposites. Green and magenta are photographic opposites. So if you see an image that has pinkish cast to it, you need to add green. And blue and yellow are photographic opposites. These are different from color theory and art. Photo color theory is RGB, art color theory is not. It's a matter of, it's called subtractive and additive color if you want to research any of that. So here, we're going to go with the defaults on color. And so now in the control panel, we're good. I'm going to look at crop. I really don't have to, but well, let's see. I guess we should. This is, you make it match the image circle of the image. And when you crop one, you crop them all. If you're using multiple cameras and different cropping, then for each one you'd click on individual crop, you know, for that camera only. But you're using one camera, one lens, so one crop is all you need. Okay, so that's good. We've done the crop. It just makes for more precision. I'm going to go to, since we've adjusted the crop, I'm going to say optimize the image. And it's telling us that its mathematical analysis of the image says this is a very good stitch. And now it makes changes because I recropped. So that should only work to our favor. Okay, we're ready to create Panorama. I'm going to tell it to go to 8,000, 4,000, even though that's a little bit bigger than it says is the optimum. But I know that these images can go much larger than that. Now we have the choice of making a blended, and we're gonna have a file format for the equirectangular that is JPEG. For the we have a choice of blended images, layered images, which we don't do that, or blended and layers. If we thought there was going to be retouching needed, it's good to do blended and layers. It's helpful in retouching. But we're just going to do the blended panorama this time about. We pick a place to store it. So we go back up to Jeff's house, Lisa's room, and we add a new folder that I'm calling Stitch PTGui Create. And we'll save it there. And then we have a choice of stitchers, and PTGui stands for Panorama Tools Graphic User Interface. We could use the Panorama Tools stitcher, but we'll stick with the PTGui stitcher. And then the blending, you can, this slider gives you choices over how broad an area does the blend between each image take place. You can make it very narrow or very wide, and there's reasons why you may or may not do that, and we don't need to go into that now. I want to use, I have another stitcher, or I have another blender loaded on my machine. I think it's NBlend. Let's see. Interpolator. I like using Spline 64, and it's just, you know, it's just a choice. And we're good to go. So at this point, I'm going to save a project file, save the project as, and we'll go back up to Lisa's room, Stitch PTGui, and we'll save this as Lisa's room Panorama. And this is a project file. We can double click on this at any time, and it will bring up all these settings with everything loaded in place. So it lets us save the choices that we've made, just like the settings files in Photoshop Raw. Now, I'll find out right away if we have NBlend as a stitcher. So I'm ready. We've set the size, we've set where to store it, what file format, blended only. And if you have a bunch of them to stitch, you say save and send to batch stitcher. and you can start working on number 2 while number 1 is stitching away. So that's what you might, that might be useful to do your house. Okay, create panorama. So we'll give you an idea of how long this takes. I won't edit this out. Um, you'll get to suffer through the real time of its stitching. Panorama tool stitches relatively quickly. I like PTGui better because when there's a geometry problem, like when you have a center, maybe a pole in a room that should be straight up vertical and it's not. That's when I say, when I mention geometry, and it's not. Panorama tools, I'm sorry, PTGui with its line tools has a very easy way to correct that stuff. And I don't know how to correct it in PTGui. However, I will tell you that most of the world, I think more people like and use PTGui than they do PTGui. But it's a matter of marketing. When PTGui started, Kohler wasn't a well-known company. Now it is. And I'll bet you the sales in PTGui have picked up remarkably well since Alexandra Jenny has started doing such great marketing. Marketing, marketing, marketing. We see it work for other companies. Hopefully it's going to work for us. And by the way, as we're waiting, I did not hear from Bob, and I will call you today and we can talk about how to deal with that. And I don't want to just let it ride. I want them to commit to when we're going to see something. And I don't know, maybe they're put off that I didn't come running. I mean, I told them I'd come, just tell me when. They never did. But it took me a few hours to answer their phone message. So I don't know. That can't be enough to put them off. I think maybe their schedule of their day got busier than they thought it was going to, but still, courtesy is courtesy, and just like John Kwan, you got to let people know what to expect. I hope we don't leave people hanging when they need to know what to expect, although, here we go. NBlend failed. So it says I don't have NBlend, so we're going to go back and just say we'll use the default one that's embedded within PTGui, and we'll go again. This one will stitch for sure. NBlend and SmartBlend are two free softwares, and I think they're both available for Windows. Only one of them is available for Macintosh. I forget which, and I consider them better than the PTGui onboard blender. But who knows? PTGui has come a long, long way since it was my primary stitcher. Used to be before I came across PTGui. And it might become again. It is really convenient that you can do the blending, the exposure blending, and the stitching all in one software. And then save that as a template and apply it to other panoramas. So it's sort of poor man's batch processing. There really wasn't much time wasted. When you go to, I told you the other day that it took me 15 minutes per panorama when you sent me JPEGs that I didn't have to retouch, and just take those JPEGs, put them together, stitch them, throw them into Panorama Tour Pro in just a previewing sort of a format, just one after another, straight line, going next, and looking at the different bands. It took me 15 minutes each. Adding the raw file step probably adds 5 to 7 minutes per bracket. And then the exposure blending step adds some more time to that 15 minutes. However, PTGui, being able to do the exposure blending as part of the stitching, might be the way for us to go on HDR. I just have to figure out, I have to talk to other friends who use it a lot and figure out how to fix geometry with it. I'm going to find one where things are a bit messed up and send it to Zhuc Long or maybe Bob Fisher in California, some strong PTGui advocates, and ask them how they fix that kind of problem, geometry problems. And what they're probably going to tell me is, shoot it perfectly to start with. Well, that's not always going to happen, especially with the 4-cam rig, especially with that. So here we go. I did spend 3 hours yesterday with Sean, and it was 3 hours well spent. And he's very excited about Burning Man. Okay, we're done. Okay, so now I can go to my CLS folder, miscellaneous 360s, meaning not window shopping, Jeff's house, Lisa's room, Stitch PTGui. So here's the project file, and here's the stitched file. Right now I'm going to save the project file. So we just saved the last things we did with it. I'm going to totally cancel out of PTGui, and now I'll show you what the project file does. If I double click on that, it launches PTGui, and it puts us right back where we were with the 15 panoramas. I love watching it build in. With the 15 JPEGs making up the image bracket for 5 images that make a panorama, and everything, if we go to preview, no, we don't want that. Oh, there's a project, oh, crop, project assistant, here we go, panorama editor, oh, that's it. So that gives us our piece. So it just opens up the whole file, the whole project right where we left it. So it's good to save that. And now here we'll open up the stitch file and look at it closely. I'd say that looks pretty nice. I'm going to go into Navigator, which on a Macintosh lets you use this box to scroll around the room. So here we can see an image blend that's a little funky. So we see all the image blends, and that's why I wanted to use NBlend or Smart Blend. But generally speaking, it did a very nice job. I don't see, as I look across straight lines, ceiling lines, and vertical lines, window ledges, that's where we'd see stitching errors if there were any. So I'm looking at the strong verticals and strong horizontals, the tile pattern. I agree, this is a very good stitch. Very good stitch. And they all don't come out this well. This is a good stitch and good exposure blending. We can see well into the details. We could do better on the highlights. And actually, Photoshop has a tool, Image, Adjust, Shadows, Highlights. I don't know why that's adjusted and that's not, but we won't waste a lot of time here. I think that the contrast needs bumped up, and it might be a tad dark, so I'm going to go into the curves tool, and here is the shadows of the image. This is just a histogram plotting out all the pixels by image brightness, or actually numbers of pixels within a certain value. I'm going to slide this one in, which makes the shadows darker. So I'm darkening the shadow side, and then I'm going to bring the midtones back up. Um, the part of the room that's away from the open windows is darker, and here's a retouching tip, and I'm not saying you need to do this, but if I go into layers, we only have one layer. This is how layers works. I'm going to copy it. So now we have two layers. The eyeball tells us which layers to view. Now watch. Right now both layers are identical and they both have the eyeball on. If I turn this eyeball off, it doesn't matter because this layer is on top of it. But if I turn this one off, now you can see that the bottom one isn't on. So I'm going to turn the bottom one on. I'm going to go back into curves, and I'm going to overly brighten the whole image. Okay, now that's too bright. But this is the value of layers. This isn't too bright. This isn't too bright. The back of the room away from the windows is not too bright. So now I'm going to turn the top layer on, which is our original stitch. Okay, and you see it go dark. I'm going to go to the eraser tool. I'm going to set the opacity for partial opacity. We'll go down to about 25%. I'm going to give myself a bigger brush to work with. Okay, now we know the layer beneath this one is lighter. So if I erase through, we'll get this out of the way for now. If I erase through, whichever layer is highlighted is the one your Photoshop work is going to happen on. So I want to work on the top layer, and I want to erase through it. So, but only at a 25% opacity, and now I'm click, 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 drag, click, 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 drag, click, that way dark corner, click, 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 little into there, open up those shadows. So now look, I'm going to turn off the bottom layer. Here's what we've erased within the top layer. We've just lessened the density of the top layer and let some of the bottom layer, which is brighter, show through, but only in the darker places. Click, 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 brighten that up a little bit. This is what I did to every one of the Putnam Lodge shots. Click, 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 click. So now we've pretty much evened out the lighting. We'll brighten the floor a little bit in this back area. So now we've evened out the lighting in the room, and that makes it more pleasant. And I'm gonna keep that. So now I have two layers. One of them is partial, and one of them is too bright. So we go up to Layer, Flatten Image, and you can see the two layers now become one. And now it's already a JPEG file. Let's look at the image size, make sure that's right. So the image size is 8,000 by 4,000. We'll change that to 72 DPI because it's going to be printed, it's going to be screen resolution. So it's 72 DPI, 8,000, 4,000. DPI just tells how it's represented, not the actual file size. So 8,000, 4,000, save. And we'll save this. And I will send you this via Hightail later.